Tonight, Majority Leader Alexander Afenyo Markin tears into the incoming government's Operation Recover All Loot as he describes it as an illegal tool being used to settle personal scores.
And this committee is only in for personal vendetta. If we allow this committee to continue with its so-called wild goose chase, it will disturb the governance of this country.
We have details as he warns his side will not allow government to use that to silence the soon-to-be minority of the House.
The incoming minority caucus, we are not going to allow you to use unconstitutional means to shut us up. We will stand firm and collective in ensuring that we stop any injustice.
And we have more from the dissolution of the 8th Parliament as Minority Leader Kaisel Atuforsen dissents on the outgoing government for what he terms as reckless borrowing.
Posterity will surely vindicate our warnings regarding the reckless borrowings and economic mismanagement under the President Akufo-Addo and Alhaji Bawumia's government.
We have all the angles covered here on Top Story, brought to you by Telecel, Connecting Energies and Holy Insecticide Spray and Coil. Enjoy a holy sleep. Well, so let's settle for the top story, as always, brought to you by Telecel and Holy Insecticide Spray. My name is Samuel Kojo Briz. And tonight, the outgoing Majority Leader, Alexander Afenyo Markin, is staring into the incoming John Dramani Mahama government's Operation Recover or Loot, describing it as an illegally formed body that must not be allowed the space to thrive in Ghana's democracy. He says the MPP side in Parliament, when it assumes the role of minority in the 9th Parliament, will ensure that the right things are done in relation to the ways of government, speaking about oral and how it operates. Now, he gave these remarks at the dissolution of the 8th Parliament today, and he's warning that his side will not allow government to use the oral to silence the soon-to-be minority of the House. Our parliamentary affairs correspondent, Kweku Asante, has been in Parliament all day, and he joins with details. Kweku, so you've been in the House, monitoring how things are proceeding with regards to the dissolution. Bring us up to speed with what is happening now and what is to come later till into midnight of today.
So as of this morning up until now, all that has been happening have been pushing towards the dissolution of the 8th Parliament, which has all but done. In fact, the Speaker of Parliament came in, gavelled the House in session. Then we have the closing remarks, that's ceremonial closing remarks from both leaders, the minority and majority leaders, and then ultimately the Speaker of Parliament himself speaking and giving what is called an understanding of the valedictory remarks that closes the entire 8th Parliament for that matter. He has since banged the gavel, suspending the House up until midnight, because by law, the life of this Parliament will not terminate until midnight, the 7th of January 2025. That will be the full 4 years of the 8th Parliament having been in force. And so the House is currently suspended, but nothing is going to happen between now and midnight substantively within the 8th Parliament itself. In fact, all members of the 8th Parliament who are not returning to the next Parliament are not expected to return to the chamber. If they have anything in their offices, they are expected to go in there and pack out because their tenure will come to the end at midnight. What is going to happen is that between 8, 9 and 10 p.m., the newly elected members of Parliament, including those in the current Parliament who have been re-elected, are going to start taking their seats in the 8th Parliament. As we speak, the chamber is going to be remodeled. It's going to be reconstituted because the numbers in the 9th Parliament is not the same as what we've seen in the 8th Parliament. At least the NDC currently have 183 seats. The NPP have only 188, and then there are 4 independents, but Ablekuma not yet to be declared. And so the seats will have to be rejigged, reshaped for the next parliament to come in. So by 10 o'clock, the expectation is that all the members of parliament who will be in the 9th parliament would have taken their seats. And then at 11 p.m., there will be the election of the speaker and his 2 deputies. As we speak, we know Alban Bagwin will go uncontested for the speakership position. Bernard Ahiafo too is going for the first deputy speakership position. No agreement yet on the second deputy speakership position. We are still keeping our ears to the ground to get some understanding. And once that is done, it will lead to 12 o'clock midnight when Chief Justice Gertrude Tokonu will come in and swear in Alban Bagwin. If he goes uncontested and is elected as speaker, he will be sworn in at 12 o'clock, and then he will in turn swear in the members of parliament elect, and then the proceedings will be brought to a close or be suspended up until 10 o'clock a.m. when members of parliament will reconvene at the Independence Square and swear in John Dramani Mahama and Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman.
Now, both leaders of the House, the current majority leader, Alexander Afenyo Markin, and the minority leader, Dr. Kisela Tuforsen, have been given their concluding remarks. Let's start from Alexander Afenyo Markin. He's been touching on the oral of the incoming government.
Well, yes, according to Alexander Afenyo Markin, the Operation Recover All Loot Committee that was set up by John Dramani Mahama, which is chaired by the Northtown MP Samuel Okudzeto-Blakwa, is unconstitutional. It has no constitutional backing. And in fact, he has now made a declaration that when it comes to the New Patriotic Party, their mantra going into the next government is that touch one, you touch all. And so if the John Dramani Mahama administration goes after any person within the NPP, it will be deemed as though he has touched and touched, of course, and they will use their full force to descend on the John Dramani Mahama government. Listen to him as he takes on the oral committee, which he says is just an unconstitutional creature by the incoming president.
I hold the humble view that it is a needless committee. It has no constitutional backing, and this committee is only in for personal vendetta. If we allow this committee to continue with its so-called wild goose chase, it will disturb the governance of this country. We don't need any so-called aura. We have institutions of state. However unhappy we may have be with their work, we must support them to do their work. We don't want people to be chasing people into people's houses, going into people's bedrooms, thinking that their government is in office, so they should chase people for so-called ill-gotten wealth. Mr. Speaker, Ghana has come of age, and I expect my friends in the NDC to know that it is not a populist agenda that makes a nation strong. It is due process of law that makes a nation strong. I regret that members of this hallowed chamber are advocates of this illegal, unconstitutional, so-called body called ORA. Mr. Speaker, let me remind my colleagues that the incoming minority caucus has a mantra, and I will disclose the mantra to them: touch one, touch all. We are not going to allow you to use unconstitutional means to shut us up, to frustrate people, to chase people into their homes. We will stand firm and collective in ensuring that we stop any injustice. Let us allow the laws of the country to work.
So that's the outgoing majority leader. Kweku, what else has he been touching on aside the oral that he just spoke of?
So he has also been speaking largely about their commitment to hold the incoming government feet to the fire. Like Afenyo Markin said, the MPP will be unrelenting. They will be unwavering in their criticism of the incoming government. They are not going to allow John Dramani Mahama government have a free room and decide whatever they are going to do. He's going to ensure that ultimately they will criticize as a reasonable opposition and will ensure that John Dramani Mahama and the NDC do not become a majority that simply have their way through and all that. He's, for instance, also been talking about the fact that a lot of the NDC MPs will become redundant. He's been doing his own count as to a number of persons who will be appointed as ministers and how all of that will go. And so he's also been talking about the fact that when it comes to the current NDC minority, it has been difficult working with them. They have been difficult persons. They have been uncompromising. Sometimes they try and have an agreement on issues. They go back on their words and all that. He has been speaking about all these matters.
Aside that, he also sort of tried to take on the minority on their stance in terms of the reappointment or the renomination of Alban Bagbin as Speaker.
Yes, according to the majority leader, in his view, there are certain elements within the NDC who did not want Alban Bagbin to become Speaker, and that if he hadn't taken certain intervention, Alban Bagbin would not have become Speaker, because according to them, there are certain persons who are within the NDC leadership or NDC in Parliament, for instance, who did not want Alban Bagbin to become the Speaker of the Ninth Parliament.
Mr. Speaker is my father. That is why I'm obliging him. Even of all he did for you people, you wanted to stage a coup against him. Some of you didn't want him to come again. Mr. Speaker, it is true. And if they dare me, I'll mention names. Yes. Some of you didn't want Mr. Speaker back. Of all that he did for you to get power, you wanted to remove him. It took the prayers of our side. It took the prayers of our side to get Mr. Speaker back to this house. It took our prayers to get Mr. Speaker back. Some of you wanted to stage a coup against him. Challenge me. Take a Bible or Quran and use it to defend yourself and let's see. Yes. Mr. Speaker, by the grace of God, you are back. By the grace of God, you are back. It pains some of them. You are back.
We also know that Dr. Kesa Latofosin has been speaking as the outgoing minority leader. Hello, Kwaku.
Hello, Bridge.
Yes, we understand that the Dr. Kesa Latofosin, who is the outgoing minority leader, has also been speaking about his role as minority leader and all that happened in the 8th Parliament.
Well, yes, in particular, he has been talking about what he called government unbridled borrowing. He believes that the current economic predicament of the state is largely because of certain acts that were taken by the Kufuor administration. For instance, he's zeroing on the Bank of Ghana, who he accused of recklessness in terms of their funding of government, their printing of money and all that. He believes all these matters have contributed to the current economic malaise that the country is facing.
Posterity will surely vindicate our warnings regarding the reckless borrowings and economic mismanagement under the President Akufo-Addo and Alhaji Bawumia's government. Records available to this House shows clearly that, the Speaker, some individuals in government profited to the tune of $159.3 million in transaction advisory fees, whilst the country was saddled with an unsustainable public debt. We also spoke out against the mismanagement of the central bank, which led to the negative equity of $55.1 billion Ghana cedis in 2022, and a cumulative loss of 71.3 billion Ghana cedis between 2022 and 2023. The Speaker, as a result, the Bank of Ghana became policy insolvent by end of year 2023. Mr. Speaker, the illegal printing of money at the Bank of Ghana to finance government expenditure contributed to the inflationary crisis we saw. That resulted in over 850,000 Ghanaians falling into extreme poverty.
All right, so this is Top Story brought to you by Telecel and Holding Set-Aside Spray. Let's bring in Ahmed Ibrahim, who is First Deputy Minority Whip and MP for Banda. Good evening to you and thanks for joining us here. Now, what's your takeaway from the 8th Parliament, of which you have been in leadership position?
To begin, let me say a very good evening to your cherished listeners, and to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to Ghanaians. The 8th Parliament will go down into history as one of the best parliaments when it comes to parliamentary oversight. And Ghanaians will forever be grateful to the 8th Parliament in its oversight work. Don't forget, the whole of Africa have awarded the 8th Parliament as the most opened parliament in the whole of entire 54 countries continent of Africa. And beside this, the 8th Parliament will go down as the parliament that was able to hold the government seat, the feet of government into fire. And that is why in all the commentary being given by the executive, the 8th Parliament, the president has never been comfortable with the 8th Parliament at all. And looking at the electoral victory, which has never happened before, presupposes the fact that the 8th Parliament was able to expose government to the generality of Ghanaians, and to the extent that Ghanaians saw what was happening, Ghanaians knew what was happening, and people therefore went to the ballot box to take a very informed decision. And that is why democratically, the NDC minority, which largely performed some of this oversight responsibility, was awarded with almost two-thirds majority of the entire chamber. So the reward Ghanaians have given to the NDC minority, making it a super majority, has confirmed that Parliament, or the 8th Parliament, the Urban Backbone Parliament, perform the oversight responsibility of Parliament to the satisfaction of Ghanaians. And that is my takeaway from the 8th Parliament.
Interesting you praise Alban Bagbin, because the outgoing majority leader is alleging that members of the minority were against the coming back of Alban Bagbin as Speaker.
Whatever you do, will you expect the student to love the most disciplined teacher who was always holding the key, following them to make sure that the right thing was done? No. And clearly, Alban Bagbin as Speaker was nominated by us. They voted against him. Why are they marketing him now? It is presupposed that he has done a very good job. And clearly, if today Afenyo has become a disciple of Alban Bagbin, he must credit with the NDC minority for bringing a very good candidate that has won the heart of almost all the NDC minority together with the MPP majority. So clearly, what Afenyo was saying, he was just trying to become a disciple of Alban Bagbin, simply because he does not have the numbers to say that he was going to do otherwise. Somebody who stood against Alban Bagbin yesterday has today become a disciple of Alban Bagbin. But we love him. Thank God the good works of Alban Bagbin has won the heart of Afenyo Markin.
Okay. Stay with me. Let me bring in Frank Anodompre, who is Majority Chief Whip. Grateful to you for joining us here. Do I still have Frank Anodompre on the line? We'll try and see if we do have him, and then we can bring. But we've been speaking to Ahmed Ibrahim. Ahmed, but you heard the Afenyo Markin there. He's speaking against the oral team formed by your government, which is to be in power from tomorrow, 7 January. What's your response to your colleague member of parliament who thinks this is unlawful and it's only to serve personal purposes?
The oral thing was part of the NDC manifesto. And Ghanaians gave the NDC manifesto two-thirds majority in parliament. And the oral thing was part of the electoral fortunes of the NDC, which led to the greatest defeat in the history of the Fourth Republic. Apart from the independence election, which gave us independence, this second independence has won, the oral thing has won the heart of almost all Ghanaians. And that's why we won with about 1.6 million votes. So it is something that Ghanaians have endorsed. And therefore, talking about the legality or illegality, the oral thing has no prosecutorial powers. But it is just like a suggesting box. If you know of any corruption case happening somewhere, give the information to the oral thing. And clearly that is what we are saying.
Okay.
So Afenyo Markin has no business saying what he's saying.
Okay. Stay with me. Let me bring in Frank Anodompre now. We have him. Grateful to you for joining us, sir. eighth Parliament will be concluding midnight of today. Do I still have Frank Onodompe? Well, it seems like I don't have him, but we will still be in Parliament, where we'll be bringing to you everything that will be happening from tonight till tomorrow, when the ninth Parliament is duly inaugurated. But Ahmed is still with me. Ahmed, you've been a first deputy minority whip. You've done something that you describe as overwhelmingly accepted by Ghanaians. The outgoing majority leader is warning of something similar or even better when they assume minority. What's your expectation or the game plan of your side when the now majority turn minority come up with that game plan to try to hold government to the walls?
You yourself, they are in minority by default. Not that they wish that they plan to go to minority, but we've just forced them and brought them there. So you can't say they will be better minority than what we did. But you see, it's good to have a very good recognized official opposition. So what they are saying, I have no problem with that. But we are ready to give ethical governance, and therefore the minority will have no work to do. But when the government is ruling well, what work will the minority do? If you have a government that is ruling very well, what work will the minority do?
Of course, anyway, the minority says whatever.
We will bring ethical governance to the benefit of Ghanaians, that the official opposition will have no work to do. And that's what John Mahama is going to do.
And when you say ethical governance, break it down for us. Exactly what do you mean?
A government that is based on good governance, a government that is accountable, a government that will not hide anything from Ghanaians. That's the government we are going to give to Ghanaians.
And that you are sticking by the promises you give Ghanaians, especially when it comes to the ministers that you intend to appoint.
We will let Ghanaians know what is happening. We'll be very principled to the point that the cars will be there for everybody to see. We are not going to hide anything. Unlike our opponents, who, when they were going to IMF, bring the cars for everybody to see, they said no. Call National Economic Forum, they said no. Let's see what is happening there, they said no. That is not the government we are going to show. We are going to give Ghanaians a very accountable governance. So you can bet me on that.
Have you already had discussions among your leadership in terms of what you're going to do in your first few days when you assume the reins of majority in the House?
Oh, President Mahama came to power with a manifesto, and he gave a timeline to the manifesto. The oral thing that they are crying and running away from, well, one was the first 3 months, and that has been done. Formation of government was part of them. We have a timeline manifesto, and everything that whatever we are going to do is going to be marked by time, and that's what we are going to do.
Have you discussed the levies and taxes to be scrapped yet?
There is no budget, so how can you start discussing them? It will be part of the budget formation and budget formulation.
Okay, I hear. Thank you for joining us here. Let me bring in Dr. Kwame Asante, Senior Lecturer, Political Department, University of Ghana. Doc, grateful to you for joining us here. What's your own reading or your own, commendation or observation, especially on the 8th Parliament that will be dissolved tonight?
I think this is a Parliament that really it did its best under the circumstances, where you had a very difficult structure in there. That's the hang nature of it. But Parliament, in spite of all the odds, was able to weather the storm. And thank God today we are coming to the end of it. They did a number of very important things. Time will not permit us to go through all. But one thing that stands out clearly for me is the way they navigated that, difficult terrain by passing the e-levy. And then the issue that they took to the Supreme Court, which ended with a ruling that deputy speakers can preside over issues and then still vote. That brought certainty and clarity to the matter. And then the last of it was the 4 MPs that were kicked out of Parliament, and then the matter ended up in the Supreme Court, the back and forth with the ruling that we have today. Even though there are some disagreements with the ruling, it provides us food for thought and how we can also navigate our way through the ninth Parliament. So these are my few observations.
Okay. And what will be your advice to the ninth Parliament?
I think that consensus building is key. This is not the time to drag feet and have intransigent positions. They should all put their shoulders on the wheel and make sure that they work with a common purpose of serving the Ghanaians who have put them there. It is true the NDC has almost absolute majority, but that doesn't take away the fact that it doesn't matter the small nature of minority voice in Parliament. They can do something if they really apply themselves to the task. And then we also outside Parliament must also put our, searchlight on Parliament by checking whether they are able to work according to the dictates of what their work prescribed for them. And we also making contribution.
Okay.
After all, we are the beneficiary of all that they do. So we must take keen interest and also support the work that they do.
Dr. Kwame Asante, I'm grateful to you. This has been Top Story, brought to you by Telecel, Connecting Energies and Holy Insecticide Spray and Coil. Enjoy a holy night. Coming up next is Newsnight.
It's the season for joy.